Okay, I guess we can start first. So today is supposed. Actually, let me reintroduce everyone again. So I'm the host, Jingyan. We have two co-hosts today, Christopher and Herbert. So they'll be answering questions along with me. And if there's, yeah. So today is supposed to be Q&A. So before we begin, does anyone have any questions they want to ask already? Because yeah, y'all can unmute yourselves if y'all want to say something. Okay, so okay, in that case, right, unlike the Git workshop, I wasn't able to make a video. Or will you prefer that I go through the slides now?
Yep, sounds like a good idea, I guess.
Okay, I'll go through the slides. So we'll skip that. This is very important. This link, especially Mozilla Developer Network, you will pretty much always have one of these open when you're doing some form of web development. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it was originally created to mark up documents because back in the days, the web wasn't developed for interactive applications like it is nowadays. So it was simply a markup format that you see a bit like Markdown nowadays. And this is a sample web page. This is our Orbital website actually. If we open it, yeah, in fact, this set of slides itself is made using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So underneath all of that, this is how the HTML part of it looks like. So if you go to your browser and you try to view it without any styling, this is how the raw HTML should render by default in your browser without any styling. And this is the source of the HTML page. So if you view the page source, you'll see that these are all the nodes and tags that form the document itself. So we start off by going through a very simple, very basic HTML page. If you view the page source of this, there's several elements. The first thing we see is this doc type declaration. So you'll pretty much see this at the top of every single HTML document. Even if you actually, let's make one right now. If you don't do that, and you open your inspector, it's kind of inferred that it's a HTML document. So either way, just put it at the top of all HTML documents. And the next thing is this HTML tag itself. So you can see there's an opening tag and a closing tag. This is where all the HTML content lives. As you can see in this Hello World document that I just made, I didn't put it explicitly. I didn't put HTML and body, but somehow the browser inferred that it's going to be inside there. Is it small? Yeah. So it automatically added them for me. The next element is the head element, which is empty in this. And finally, we have this body element where I have just placed some text inside it, nothing fancy. Now there's something that's a little weird here. Oh, right. There's opening text and closing text, but you probably already know that by now. So this head tag is supposed to contain some metadata like your title. In this document, we didn't have a title, so it just gave the file, a path to the file itself. But if we were to add some kind of title, as say we were to change this title to you can see that the title is reflected at the top here. So I didn't go through this in the slides itself, but you can see that the rest of them have some kind of icon over here. This is also a favicon, and if you are interested, you can, as usual, go to the Mozilla documentation and then search for favicon. It will be somewhere there.
Anyway, I just want to add on that, okay, to open a HTML file, right, actually, if you are developing locally, you can just double click it and open your web browser, and then it will just like you see in Jingyan's web browser, it just opens up the HTML file. So yeah, you don't need to do anything fancy like uploading to a host or anything. Just double click the file and it will just open up in your web browser. Yeah.
Okay, we went through this earlier. Okay, now earlier I was talking about this thing, right? So this is a HTML entity. It starts with this ampersand, and then it ends with this semicolon. So these are like special strings that begin with this and end with this for you to display special characters. The reason why you need these entities is because some of these characters are special. Like, for example, this less than, this greater than, they are used to mark up this document, like put all the text in. So if you want to represent them as part of your string, part of your text, and not the HTML document itself, you need these escape entities. So as an example, this one should be these 3 ellipses. Yep, there's a whole bunch of them. You often see, for example, at the bottom of a page, you might have a footer, and then people like to put maybe a copy right there, or you can put an ampersand. And whatnot. There is a reference chart on the HTML spec itself, but this is kind of smaller. And these are all the entities that are supported by your browser. So, okay, I briefly talked about this document inspector in the slides. I'll go through this a little more in depth now. So when you press whatever keyboard shortcut it is, or you go to your browser and then you go to like maybe web developer, and then you click on inspector, you will see this pop up. So these are part of your developer tools. You will pretty much be using this all the time if you are doing web development on the browser. It comes with your inspector, where this one shows you your document itself. And if you select something over here, you see all the details of all the, for example, over here we have all the styles that have been applied to this div, starting from the most specific to the less specific, less specific. This should be the browser defaults. This is the console where you'll be dealing with JavaScript over here. JavaScript is not covered, but I suspect most of you will probably be using this a lot. This is a debugger where you can debug stuff like at breakpoints and whatnot. Maybe this. Yep. This is for you to capture network requests, and this is a style editor. I don't think other I don't think a lot of browsers have this style editor. Firefox does, so you can edit styles right here, but not all of them will have this. And the rest of them I shall not go through, but you will probably use them in your project if you are doing something related to the web. Okay, you probably already know this. Okay, yeah. So you're actually able to edit things over here by double clicking. So if I wanted to change this from a div, maybe not that, maybe I don't want to edit this, maybe I want to edit this. So if I double click, I'm able to edit it. So I could, for example, start wrapping this in a tag. And then I click outside. Nope, that is not what I want. Let's see. Huh. Okay, never mind, let's ignore that. It's Firefox being Firefox.
I think when you do that in the browser, it escapes it for you.
Yeah, it should work in Chrome.
Yeah, but anyway, that tool is just for you to like debug and like troubleshoot your web page. It's not for you to sort of like write your code on. So even if you edit the source inside of the browser itself, it won't change your source file. So it's really just for you to like tinker around with your page.
Yes. So the changes that you make here are temporary and not last, so they won't affect your document. So, okay, yes, it works over here, but not in Firefox. So I guess good to keep that in mind. So if I refresh the page, this change will be gone. So it's good for making quick edits to your document, especially styling. Like sometimes you want to experiment with some style, so you can go over here and then edit in line, like maybe just edit it here, see how it looks, and then confirm the change in your browser, I mean in your editor. So yeah.
It's also good for making memes. Yeah,
yes,
it's also good for making memes.
Yes, but we will not go into that here unless people are interested. Okay, so you've already seen a bunch of elements, head, body, HTML. So those don't really do anything to the document. So we start out with some like more visible elements. So the first most generic one that you'll see in pretty much every page is div. I bet if we go to like Luminous now, we can see a whole bunch of divs. Where are my divs? Oh, div, yeah, a whole bunch of divs. So this is the most generic element for you to just wrap your content in, and it just helps you divide up your content so that, yeah, divided. But you don't always want something that's so generic. Usually, you want to mark up your document and let it carry like convey the meaning of that section. Like for example, you have a paragraph, you might want to denote it as a paragraph, the main content of your page, an article in your page, the header and the footer, etc. And this is actually very important, which is why I put it at the front of this guide. Because the most important reason is accessibility. You want to make sure that your site is accessible to maybe impaired users, like those who are visually impaired, and they will have to depend on things like screen readers to navigate your site. So really, please make sure that whether you're, however it is you're developing your site, please make sure it is accessible. It's very important. Yeah. There's also SEO, because sometimes if we go to something like maybe Facebook now, and then we can see that their head, oh my god, there's a mess. Yeah, they have inside their head tag, they have a bunch of things like the meta, the character set. Can we scroll this? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, they should have more stuff actually. Okay, they should have more meta tags that helps to for SEO, but I don't see it for now. So let's ignore that. And also literally the semantic meaning of the page.
Yeah, so I just like to talk about SEO a bit. So it probably won't matter much in your Orbital project, but in the future, when you guys go and work on your other very big projects, and like you start a company or join a company or something, you realize that a lot of companies nowadays focus on SEO, search engine optimization. And essentially what that means, right, is you just want it such that when people search for anything related to your product, you want it to appear near the top, or if not at the top of Google search. So that's what search engine optimization is helping to do. So why that is important is that, let's say you're starting a new company, starting a new application, you want people to be able to discover your product. And in fact, there's a whole field allocated to like SEO. Like there's a lot of SEO research everywhere, and like people just are trying to push their websites to be at the top of Google so that people can reach them. And in fact, there's a term for that. It's called organic traffic. So yeah, if you guys are gonna work in like web dev in the future, I'm sure you come into contact with that. And one of the key things that the easiest way to do SEO is to start with the layout of the website. So let's say your header text, your H1 text, your H2 text, it should sort of make it easy for Google to crawl your website and to like understand the structure of your website so that it understands how to rank you in the algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah, what Chris said. So as an example, this is a news article from CNA. You can see that this page itself has a whole bunch of like meta tags, like OG site, whatever, Twitter card, Twitter site, Twitter description. So I think maybe not the Twitter ones, or maybe it's the OG ones. These are the tags that allow Google to display over here, like picture over here, the title over here, the hours ago, who published this story, etc., etc. So, yep, that's the SEO part of it. Okay, so semantic elements, there's a whole bunch of them. The most standard ones, you've probably seen them a lot already, are headings, paragraphs. As expected, they are paragraphs. Lists. You will see lists a lot, and in fact, you will see like things nested in lists a lot. Basically, you're going to put things in lists whenever they make a list. So something like this would be a list, list, list. This is also a list. All these search results are lists of search results, etc. Close all this. Links, so you can navigate. At this point, does anyone have any questions already? Because, yeah, please ask questions. Okay. If not, maybe I will go through links a bit more because I feel like I didn't really cover them properly. So back to this document, we can have a link to some other page, like this is a link to Google, but we can also have a link to something in the same domain. Within the same, so this will be a link to this index.html within the same folder. Do I have one? Let's see. Okay, I don't have a index.html in this ex folder. So maybe I will change it to something else. Test.html. Yeah. So if your link isn't valid, it will either display that. It will display that. You can have anchors to specific parts of your page. So maybe let's not do this now. Let's do this later. Okay, now all these parts inside a tag, like the opening part of a tag, right? Length equals to en, char set equals to utf-8, href, all these. These are called attributes. Like they are the attributes of this tag itself. And some tags has special attributes. For example, anchor has href, meta has a whole bunch of them, HTML has length. You probably won't figure out every single one of them ever. So what you do is, as expected, you go to MDN and then you read about the tag itself, and then you figure out like what attributes it has. But some of them you'll get very familiar with, like for example, href and class ID, or this. You'll get very familiar with them, whatever you're doing. So this part is the attribute name, and then this part is the attribute value. It's just like a map. So we also can have self-closing elements. Like you can see the image, right? Doesn't have image, right? Isn't a tag that closes like this, but it just closes itself. And this slash is optional. So we can display a lot of stuff like image. We can display a lot of content like images, videos. What else? Chris, give me an example of more interactive content.
GIFs, memes.
GIFs are images.
Memes.
Right, yes. Memes are also images. Okay, I have a good example. So if we go back all the way to the start of the slides, this entire thing is actually the Orbital page itself, and it's embedded through an iframe. An iframe allows you to embed, like, can you all see? Yeah, this special thing is an iframe. It allows you to like embed other things inside your page itself, like for example, an entire other site. So this is actually the Orbital site embedded into this set of slides itself. Okay, where were we? Yeah. So where is the, as usual, MDN covers everything. Where are my, okay, let's not get there now, but basically everything you want to know about any element or whatever, it is just in MDN. So we can nest other elements inside. Like in this example, we have an image of Google inside a link to Google. And this nesting, you've already seen it. In fact, like you can see all this content is nested inside body. This plain text itself, Google, is nested inside this. And this is how entire complex HTML pages are built. Nest, 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 nest. Oh, this is pretty nice. So this is the first exercise. And then you're supposed to recreate this page. Actually, I am just going to do it right here. It looks like a H1. Maybe, no, let's keep it at Google. I'm lazy. It doesn't have a footer. This is an ordered list. And this is a tool. I mean, looks good to me. So if you were working through this, actually, because of the developer tools, if you wanted the answer is literally right here. So you can inspect and see how this was done. Oh, right, I should have used a paragraph. Yep, missed that out. So besides that, we had labels like section 1, whatever. So maybe we can wrap this chunk in a section. And other than that, you can play around with it. But this is really a very straightforward exercise, just to see that you have seen all these tags.
Yep. So if you look at the HTML text that Jingyan used, right, actually the meaning is quite like obvious what they do. But if you know what they mean, so like H1 to like H3 is just heading, and UL is unordered list, and LI is the one that you guys probably wouldn't really know intuitively, but LI just means like this item. So if anything or like all this that you guys don't know, right, you can just go and like look up on the MDN. So like you realize that he nested two LI tags inside UL and he nested two LI tags inside OL. So if you can look at the difference, it's just the difference between a bullet and a numbered list, and which is like defined by the enclosing tag, which is the UL and the OL. So yeah, that's how the text work.
For unordered list, when you don't need some kind of ordering, and then OL for ordered list. Oh yeah, now that we are here, I might as well talk about this. So you can see like the unordered list starts off with this kind of bullets, right? And then the ordered list starts off with like numbering. So that doesn't mean that when you want numbers, you use ordered list, and you want just plain bullets, you use UL. You can actually style all this. Like you can style your UL to have numbers, not that I see why you want that. Or you can style this to just disappear. And in fact, I think that's a very common pattern. Like you've probably seen those nav bars, like, yeah, there's one right here, right? If this orbital page, right, you can consider all these links at the top, a list of links, right? And to me, I would consider this an unordered list of links, but you don't see the bullet in front of them, right? So let's see whether Orbital does use a link for all this. Oh, to select something, you can click on this and then highlight, hover over it, and then click it. So we have this container. Okay, you see over here, they are using a UL, unordered list, and then each link inside here is inside a list item itself. And then you don't see the bullet points in front. It's because it has been removed through CSS. Over here, list style none. Let's see if I disable this, does it pop up? Yeah, it's kind of, the contrast isn't very good, but I can see like, now that I click on that, it suddenly popped back in. Okay. So earlier
so another example of like nesting text is like, let's say you want to link a picture to like another page, right? So what you can do is you can nest anchor tag with a image tag. Then it will just make the image clickable. Yeah. Oops. Okay. I see you have a slide that covers that.
Yeah. So now we are at CSS. So earlier we talked about how HTML was marking up your document, right? What CSS does, and I think I actually should have given a more full picture of, in fact, the entire web page itself in general first. So with the web, there's three main technologies: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. With HTML, what you do is you mark up your document, you give it a meaning. With CSS, you control all the style, how your document looks essentially. And with JavaScript, you give it the behavior of your web page, the interactivity. So as an example for this page, if we view it with no style, it's just this strange looking mess of buttons and whatnot. If we give it back its style, we set up this document to look the way it is now. And the JavaScript is what enables me to do things like press escape, then I can see an outline of my entire presentation itself. So that is the behavior of this presentation. And the CSS is just the styling, basically. So we can have inline styles. What that means is we apply the styling directly to the page, to the element itself. So the example given here is color blue. Sure, why not? Maybe we add a background color. Ew. Yeah, but that's how you control the styling inline. So this is pretty specific, but we'll cover that later. So with styles, you have things called properties. This is a property. So there's a whole bunch of properties defined for every single one. I personally don't know all of them. And same thing, every time you want to know about some kind of property, you go here, and then you look up color. Oh no, this is the media one. We want to. And then if you want to discover like what properties that exist, you also come to MDN as well. So this is the value. So same thing, it's just like a map like that. Property key value, property value, same thing. Whoa, oh, I have a list. Yes, as you can see, it is pretty comprehensive. Wow, never seen some of this before. What is Unicode range? So these are very common properties that you will pretty much mess with whatever project you are building. So now we cover this CSS box model. So if you inspect something with the developer tools, right, you'll see that when I hover over this, I can see this kind of blue box. Where's my cursor? This blue box, and then this yellow color. Or maybe when I hover over this image, same thing, a blue box, yellow color. There's purple color over here. Yeah. So the way CSS deals with things, right, is it considers every single element a box. And then each box will have like, each box, if you can follow my cursor now, and if the stream is fast enough, each box has all this margin, which is the stuff outside, a border, and then a padding, which is like the space inside, and then the content that is carrying. This is probably easier to explain visually, so I will mess around with this document again. So let's clear this. Okay, let's do it right here. Okay. We can style this element directly over here. So the margin is like the space outside of this element. So let's add a border first. Sure, why not? Blue. Stop selecting. No, blue isn't very good. Black. So this is the border, and then the space outside of this element. Let's exaggerate it a bit. Margin. Let's give it some super big margin, 50 pixel. So you can see a lot of space was added like in the area outside of this tag itself. Not really outside, but if you hover over, you can see earlier there was less of this yellow color, and then now we have a lot of this space around. The padding is
Can you click on the layout tab on the tools?
What?
Layout. Click on the layout beside the computer. Yeah, then you'll be able to see the.
Yeah, you see we have added 50 pixel margin around the entire element itself. So the border is what we first added just now, and then the padding will be the one inside. So if I add a lot of padding, this element will look pretty funny. Let me show you the effect. There's a whole bunch of padding here. And yeah, this is the box model. So when you're styling something, you probably want to control all of this so that your page looks exactly how you want it to look. And this is where the fun part comes in. Okay, another thing is I only put like 50 pixel around here, right? But if I put two entries like 50 pixel and then maybe 10 pixel, you can see that the 10 pixel was applied to like the left and right. So this is a shorthand for this CSS syntax. If you only put one, value, it applies it to all four sides. If you put two, the first part will apply to the top and bottom. The second part will apply to the left and right. And then if you put in 4, like 3 pixel, 100 pixel, it will go in this order: top, right, bottom, left, clockwise direction starting from 12 o'clock, like that. Same thing with padding and border. No, not the same thing with border. For border, the shorthand goes like this. You specify the size and then the style of the border. I think to change it to something like dotted U, and then the color. Now, if you want to reuse something, like we realize that we are recycling like the color blue over paragraph so much, we want to just apply the style to all paragraphs. We want all paragraphs to have blue text. What can we do? One way is we can apply the style to paragraphs directly. So I don't have paragraphs here. Maybe I should have, maybe I will style. Maybe I'll style the list item. And then instead of styling everything inline, now all my list items are blue color. Another thing, so let's go into this syntax first. This first part is called the selector, which, so now this simply selects like all the lists in the document, and then it will apply all the styles inside the declaration block, which is this opening and closing curly brace, onto, you apply all these styles onto all those elements in this document itself. This thing is called a declaration. Same thing with the property and the value of the property. Okay, now we are back to this. Right, just now I mentioned that I was going to talk about all links, right? Maybe let's make this a longer document. Yeah, so now I'm able to scroll. We have things like IDs. So an ID is a unique identifier for an element in your document. So you specify the attribute and ID equals to something, give it some name. I'm just going to call it my ID in this case. And then you're able to refer to it as my, using this pound sign, and then the name of your ID, and then you can give it some property. So the ID is the most specific selector in this, in CSS, not just CSS actually. And besides using it as a selector, you can actually link to it. Like, if I go all the way to the bottom and I click this, it will jump over to here. Maybe that's not so obvious. Maybe I will put it somewhere in the middle. ID equals to another ID. So this link now should jump to wherever weird place I place that ID. Yeah, somewhere here. And also classes. So classes are how you are able to create some arbitrary reusable style. Like in the example in the slide, we have a dot red, which applies the color red property. So if you put it inside the class attribute for your element, this thing should give you a red bold paragraph. And you can see you can put a bunch of classes inside the value of the attribute. So if you go to some more complicated page, maybe yeah, actually maybe Orbital, we will probably see a whole bunch of class equals to something something. Yeah, wow, look at this. Look at this poly. It is, yes, the class home page template. Yeah, there's a lot. And oh, this is also a lot. Wow. So classes are how people create reusable styles and then keep applying them everywhere. Now, when you are building, if you are going to build your project on some modern front-end library like maybe React or Vue or one of those JavaScript libraries, you will probably end up using class a lot. And so one thing you might want to keep in mind is keep your classes small and reusable so that you kind of can identify what kind of style you're going to have just by looking at the class when you're debugging.
Single responsibility principle.
Hello? That mode is over, please stop.
But it applies to web dev as well, though.
That's true lah. Okay, up to this point, does anyone have any questions? Because today was really supposed to be Q&A, but I'm like going through the slides, even though I didn't make any video also. Yeah. Slack also have. Okay. Oh. Okay. Would you all like me to go on, or like are people zoning out already? Like really no questions are like, for example, related to your project itself. Okay, I guess I will continue. So CSS selectors. So earlier we already talked about how this was a selector, right? This one was a tag selector, like we selected all the li tags. This was an ID selector, we selected this ID, class, this wildcard. This selects like every single element. So this is the least specific one. And then this square bracket allows you to select by some attribute. Like for example, we don't have anything. Yeah, I guess you can select by href, although that's kind of weird. Like why would you do that? You would probably just want to select the anchor element itself. But just keep in mind that you have a lot of power when controlling what you want to select, and all these are just tools at your disposal. You are able to compose selectors as well, like all this dollar and tilde. Yeah, I think we covered that later. Yeah, combining selectors. So if we have this, like a tag and a class, if you're putting things together, right, it's pretty much an AND operation. You're selecting something that is of this tag and has this class. Same thing with this. If you have like dot class 1 and dot class 2, you're selecting all the elements that have both this class 1 and class 2. And for this, if you have a comma and then you select the next thing, you're selecting, this is like or, you're selecting class 1 or class 2, and then you're going to apply all these stuff to that. Besides that, now we've been doing inline styling, but same thing, you want to do your single responsibility principle. So a lot of times people put the style sheet separately, or do they? Web practices are always changing. Recently I saw someone suggesting maybe we should have non-inline styles. Anyway, so usually people create a separate like .css file, and then they put the styles in there. And then inside the page itself, they reference, they link to that style sheet. So this should still have, yep, all the styles are still there.
Yeah, so this is like importing a package or like importing another library in like whichever programming language you know. Is the same concept. So you just put all your styles into one other file and just like import it to your HTML file. It's the same idea.
Yeah, sometimes they'll be in just one file. Sometimes if you decide you want it that way, you can separate them into multiple style sheets. There are actually pros and cons to doing all this, but I am not intending to go into those today here. So if you're interested, you can ask about that. So we have come to exercise 2. Wow, actually same thing. I am very lazy, so I am going to just style this directly. Exercise 2. Okay. Wow, I didn't put a slide for this. Okay, my bad. So besides that, besides all that selector here, selector there, you are able to style things like, for example, import fonts. And one very common way, right, is to go to, for example, to find some font provider. Google Fonts is one of the most popular one. Then select some font. Like over here, I chose this font, Montserrat, kind of overused. And then maybe we select it, and then I am not going to download it. I'm just going to put it in the style sheet itself. So, hello, please don't do that. I add the import into the style sheet. Now I'll be able to use Montserrat. And then now I want, how did I style it? Did I style the entire page? Wow, I did. Okay, so I'm going to use the star selector to select everything. And then I'm going to add, wow. Hey Chris, how do I lock this thing? It's very annoying. Okay, never mind.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Hey guys, just so you are not confused with the syntax, right? Just look at the file that is editing. You realize you need to differentiate between the HTML file and the CSS file. So the import thing is like a syntax that's specific to CSS. Yep. Just so that we are not confused. Yep. So when you are following through his examples, just keep in mind what file type he's editing.
And with that, we have applied the Montserrat font to every single thing. Maybe we should have done that. Maybe
in fact, using fonts like this, like Google Fonts, it's actually a pretty good practice because you realize that let's say some of you guys use Mac, some of you guys use like Windows. You realize Windows and Macs have like different types of fonts, and sometimes you want your site to look the same on both like Windows, Mac, and like Linux or even Android and iOS. So you want to like just import like a Google font. It sort of just like standardizes the look of everything and ensures that it looks like how you envision your web app to be. Yeah.
So the benefit of that, right, is it gives you consistency. So you can be confident that if the browser implements it right, your page should look the same on whatever device that you, or rather at least the fonts will look consistent on whatever device you visit it on. You might have noticed that for when I don't style anything, right, my Firefox renders this in some fancy, in some strange serif font, which was my own setting. So if you don't explicitly style things yourself, the browser defaults will just take over. So that approach that Chris was talking about, right, will give you consistency over your page. At the same time, right, some some best practices advocate for like native fonts. So whatever your users configure it to be, like instead of Montserrat, instead of like me styling it Montserrat, I can just declare sans serif and then let the browser's default sans serif take over. So there's also arguments for like not making all the fonts the same, but these are all like web practices. And I think my opinion is it's your own page, it's your own project. Like seriously, just put whatever you want, as long as you keep in mind things like accessibility. Like obviously you don't want something like this to be like you don't want this font to be white color or something, right? Other than that, things like fonts, honestly, you can just express your own preference on that.
Yeah, and another thing I didn't mention is that when you use like Google Fonts and external fonts, the user actually has to download the font before it gets loaded. So adds on to the load time, but it's not very significant because the font is also served via a content delivery network, which just picks the server that's nearest to the user and like ensures that the download is fast. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And Jingyan, do you want to talk about fallback fonts?
Actually, we just did, right? Like over here,
but
like I had Montserrat.
Yeah.
So if I comment out this Montserrat, right, then over here I shouldn't have Montserrat anymore. So what it does is it should fall back to like sans serif, to the default one. Chris, are you there?
Yep, I'm there.
Yeah, okay, I'm hearing some like noises over there. I don't know what happened. It should fall back to my browser sans serif. Let's see. Yeah. So it's still sans serif. So now I bring back this import, and then it should detect that Montserrat is valid, and then it will be installed in Montserrat. So you can actually declare like multiple font families, and this is the standard practice. If we go to like maybe GitHub, I'm pretty sure GitHub does it. Pretty sure GitHub does it. Okay, font family. Yeah, you see they have a whole bunch in fact. So what they use is, okay, earlier let me zoom in first. Earlier we were talking about like using system fonts, right? So GitHub is an example that instead of forcing their own font, they prefer the system font. So this is a shorthand for like preferring the Apple system font first, then falling back on Seagull UI, which is the Windows one, Helvetica, which I think is the whole Mac OS one. Or is it
Mac and Windows? Yep.
Yeah,
both Mac and Windows.
Arial. Yeah. I don't have like this Blink Mac system font, I think. So it falls back to this Seagull UI, which I have installed. So if I didn't have any of this, it would probably fall until like maybe it would look really ugly like Arial. Okay, maybe Arial isn't that ugly, but okay, whatever. Yep. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Chris. Okay. What are we doing on time? 11:04. Wow, I should speed up this. Okay, I don't think I'm going to cover all this, like this particular bullet. The example solution, I believe, uses classes, but if you use something like nth child, which is taught later in the slides, I don't see anything wrong with that. As this is simply an exercise for you to like mess around and then try to replicate this. If you manage to reach the same solution using some other method, it's probably fine. Okay, so now combinators. Yeah, this you're able to select like let's see. No. Oh, that is. Okay, that should be good enough. You are able to have more specific selections by combining different selectors. So this X followed by a space and then Y, right, allows you to select like Ys that are descendants of X. So as an example, over here we have UL and LI. This isn't very common, but you can specify like UL and LI. Although then in that case, this color blue should only be applied to unordered lists. Yeah, this list styling should only be applied to unordered lists. And if we go to this page, yeah, it's no longer applied to ordered lists. Direct child. So do we have a direct child here? Article. Okay, let's just cook up one on the spot. So body H1. Okay. Now, this shouldn't be applied to anything. What? Oh, right. Direct child, sorry. Yeah, that was just any descendant. This is the direct child. Yeah, so this won't be applied because this only applies if the H1 was a direct child. But over here, you can kind of see that it's like you have body, then you have an article, then you have this H1. So this H1 isn't a direct child. If on the other hand, we change this body to an article, the style should apply now. Yep, but it looks terrible. Directly after and direct. No, this is after and this is directly after. There's a few more of these combinators actually. So same thing. I don't think I will go through all of them today because of time constraints. But yeah, same thing. MDN has everything. Okay. So now, they are just used to apply CSS on ID and classes coming useful here. Okay, I wrote this and it is kind of true, which is why if you go to any page, like maybe GitHub, you will really see a whole bunch of divs. But at the same time, even though I said that, right, I will also caution against overusing div and span. Try to keep it as small as possible, clean if possible. Sometimes things are not within your control, especially if you pull in external libraries when you're working on your project. But if you can, try to use divs and span as little as possible, and then keep the document clean. Yeah, there should be a whole bunch of div. Oh, almost everything is a div actually. Okay, but they have, at the same time, you can see that they still use semantic elements like an aside and another aside. Okay, now this is pretty fun. You're able to give it like pseudo classes, or rather not give it, you're able to specify all these properties for pseudo classes. Like what happens when you hover over something and then you apply the style only when you're hovering over it, or focus when something is selected. It's like your tap, if you tap into something, like over here, this MDN link, which you can't really see at the moment. Over here is focus. You can select like the nth. Optionally, you can put a last of something, first and last of something, blah, 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 all these, and then only apply styles to them. So, and syntax. Yeah, you can specify like odd, even, or something like this, very simple formula. I won't go into this too much. So this is how you color this table. So let's try to break this down. It looks kind of long. So first you apply this to the table rows inside a table. So n of type. So you're selecting the odd ones and you're selecting the ones that are not the first of type. So if this is correct, then every like third, fifth, seventh row should be highlighted with AAA, which should be some kind of gray. Is it? Yeah. So this part over here, not first of type, excludes this because this is actually a row itself, like the table header. So we, in this example, it excluded the style onto the header, which makes sense because otherwise it would look so weird. And then it applies this background AAA, which is a gray, to every odd column. Sorry, every odd row. Now we should be coming up on exercise 3. Yep, we are. So now what we want to do is we modify this table such that when we hover over it, the colors invert, meaning like this, instead of the odd rows with the gray color background, we have the even rows. So I don't actually remember how to do this, so let's try to deal with this. Can I add it? Okay, I'm going to do it manually actually. Okay, let me see. We don't really need the table. Specify this. So end of child. Okay, we need a hover selector. We need to be even. And then not first of type, we should keep that there. What happens? No. So what else? We no longer want this. Not hover. No, that wasn't what I wanted. Let's see. Wow, how did I do this? TR end of type correctly. Not first of type, not hover. Oh, right. Right, I apply it to the table. Yeah, not the row itself, no wonder. Yep. So sometimes when you see like this isn't really an animation. Yeah, this isn't an animation. When you see some things changing on hover, that's actually CSS doing it. You could do this with JavaScript, but there are advantages to doing it in CSS. The main one is performance. Like the CSS engine is more optimized for doing these kind of things. With JavaScript, it has to run through all the DOM nodes and then update them through CSS, basically. So you have additional overhead of doing it in JavaScript. So if possible, try to do like things like this, which is after all styling and should be CSS responsibility. Okay, inheritance. So when a property is not specified, it inherits from its parent. Yeah, so when a property isn't specified, it first goes from like your browser defaults. Then when you start specifying things, the least specific one, it was the star, the wildcard that you saw earlier, like just this thing alone. And then after that, followed by tags. So you inherit from all its parents and go on like that. Yeah, this is a very cute diagram of CSS specificity. Yeah, this is the least specific one, followed by the tag, followed by the two elements, blah, 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 blah. And then, so IDs get more specific. Then IDs, is it? IDs followed by selectors, like other attribute selectors and whatnot, followed by inline styles. Yeah, inline styles take precedence over like style tag or style shape. And then finally, this part, the important. So important is like a declaration that you is a declaration that you put in the value itself, and this has the effect of not allowing you to override the style. So you will often, no, not often, sorry. You will sometimes see this. Please try not, please don't abuse this because you generally don't want to use it unless it's really important. Okay, now laying out. Okay, so far we have only been talking about like styling specific elements and blah, whatnot. But really, you also want to be able to control the layout of the entire page. If not, like we have something like this, but it's still so very linear at the end. So first, let's talk about the units. We have different units. M, which is font size point. Font size point. Yes, M is the font size point. So it's relative to, sorry, with respect to your font size that you have configured. Another one is rem, relative M, points and pixels. I'm not going into details with all these, but basically you will be using all of this. You won't be like sticking to just M or point or pixel. So all these are just tools for you to use to specify your units. Okay, now for layouts, right? There's many ways to control the layout of your page. So in this presentation, we covered grids, which is literally like what is calls itself like a grid. So you are able to, you can think of having a grid, and then you're able to position different things within this grid itself. A flex box, which is like 1D grid. So you are able to imagine just a 1D grid that doesn't allow you to have both rows and columns, only like rows, only columns. CSS frameworks. So for your Orbital project, if you're going to do some form of CSS, you are probably going to use like some CSS library, Bootstrap Foundation, Semantic UI, maybe one of those more modern ones, Tachyons and whatnot, and then legacy. So I put over here like legacy using floats, right? But it's not really pure legacy. You'll probably end up using a combination of all of this, and it really depends like what you're trying to style. And in fact, all these CSS frameworks, right, they're probably using a combination of all of those as well. Oh yeah, so earlier I was talking about grids. So we have like rows and columns, and we are able to control the sizes of all these, and then you lay out different things. So as an example, let's think about GitHub. I don't know whether GitHub actually uses grids, but if we consider that, let's think if they were using a grid, then we can see several distinct elements, right? Like we can see this navigation bar, we can see this aside, we can see this list, and we can see another aside. Maybe at the bottom, we'll probably see the footer. Yeah, we can see their footer with a bunch of links. And maybe this footer itself is using grids. So these are rows and columns of links. So this could be a grid as well. This entire thing could be a grid as well. So to start off with grids, you can you first have to specify a container. In this example, we are using div, and then we declare that this grid has a display property of grid. It could also be inline grid. And then we specify a grid template, which is, I think these are the rows and columns, or it's columns and rows. Let's see, MDN grid template. Grid template, rows, grid template. So let's see, the syntax is something slash something. Okay, so rows come first, followed by columns. So this side would be the rows, and then this side is the columns. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I feel like I'm talking. Okay. Oh yeah, actually I covered this. These are the rows, and then this side is the columns. So you're able, okay. We thought just now we had like 9 rectangles, right? But with grids, right, you actually have a lot of control over how you want the layout to be. So you can have like weird layouts like this. Maybe this is a nav bar and this is something over here. Or this is just a weird example actually. So we have, so firstly we have this CSS grid column lines, which is the lines outside here, 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 and here. And if we go to the property, wait, grid column lines. So a column is like, do I cover tracks? If you consider like this entire column, right? This entire column, this column, these are individual tracks. Then it's outside of the tracks or to the sides of the tracks, right? You have all these column lines, which you are able to style as well. Same thing for rows, you have row lines, and they are numbered, so you can refer to them like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you are able to specify like the row and the column span. So I think in this example, it should be, this thing is between 1 and 4, and then this thing is in the first column, and then this thing is between 1 and 4. Yeah, this thing is the start line, and then this thing is the ending line. So this row starts from, if we go back to the row, this thing starts from here, and then it ends at here. So this is like a big row. Now, this is the last exercise. And you're supposed to replicate this. So actually, instead of coding it out again, let's just go here and see how it's defined. So firstly, we have the div with the ID of main. The styles are over here. Okay, that's not very good for viewing. Okay, the styles are over here. Firstly, we start the div, which gave all these things like their funny margin and padding, so we can clearly see where each div is. Next thing for the main. Next thing, we start the main, which is like our grid container for all the things inside. Now, we have several elements, head, box 1, box 2, box 3, and the footer over here. So first we declared this as a grid, and then we gave it a grid template. So this is the rows, and then these are the columns. So over here we have 3 different declarations for the grid, for the row side. The first one is mean content, then one fraction, and then mean content. Mean content is like this property that gives you, that specifies that you take up as much space as you need to, and that's about it. Or sorry, as little space as you need to, and then leave the rest of the space for the rest of the grid. 1FR, this is the unit for fraction. So you're going to take up this 1 unit, and in this case, you took out like the entire, you pretty much took out all the remaining space because 1FR, it was like the only FR declaration. And then like finally for the footer, also the minimum content. For the rows, you have like 1FR, 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 and then they are even. So actually, all these 3 are taking up the same amount of space. If we try, let's open the file locally. So if we were to change something, like maybe I made this take 10 FR, or yeah, it's going to take up like 10 times as much space as the other 2. Is it? Yes, it is. So let's put that back. We specified a max width. I think this was just for sanity. And then margin 0 auto. So the margin 0 auto is, you'll probably see this a lot, by the way, margin 0 auto. It's just a very nice and easy way for you to center something. Center something horizontally. Now, for the head, your grid column, you're taking the column from track 1, which is something like around here, all the way to track 4, and then your grid row is 1. So the footer, which is this, grid row was 2, and then box 1, box 2, box 3, the grid row is just 2, which is in between. And then for the rest, for the grid columns, you just declare them 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like this. And there you have it, a very simple replication of this. Okay. Okay, now this is probably, okay, we are doing okay on time. Yeah, this is probably the most relevant to your Orbital project already. So we have like went through very basic HTML and CSS. Like there's only so much we can cover in a quick intro crash course. But the point is, you in your Orbital project, right, you most likely won't be writing HTML or CSS by hand. Like you will be styling things yourself, and you will be dealing with something like HTML, but you probably won't be writing all of this by hand. So what you would probably do, right, is you would learn something like maybe a React, or maybe Vue, or some of these. And these are libraries that actually allow you to create entire web apps in their own fashion. Like you write it in JavaScript, and then the library generates all this HTML for you. So if it's not too slow, we can actually go through an example now in React. I won't be covering React. I just want to show you what happens when we generate a project. So I've included a React example. Say this is the default, this part of the default template generated by Create React App, where you have this function app and it returns all this. So all this stuff right inside here looks like HTML. It's not actually HTML. It goes through several steps, and it's just JavaScript underneath, like JavaScript objects underneath. It just so happens that the library allows you to write in this thing that looks like HTML, so that you can think in terms of your layout when you're coding your React stuff. And then after that, it generates all these actual HTML into your app, into your page that via JavaScript. So React isn't covered, but if I have time, I would like to show like what happens inside. So this is exactly the page that was generated by this sample code. So if I disable JavaScript, we shouldn't be able to see anything. Where is my JavaScript? Yeah, all those HTML, right, was generated by the JavaScript. So without JavaScript, I wasn't able to view this page at all. So I guess that's a limitation of all these JavaScript apps, but we are not going into that. So so even if you're not developing like a web app through all these like JavaScript libraries, right? Maybe you were you're going to document your project using HTML. So maybe you're going to use a static site generator, or you're going to do your documentation on something like this, read the docs. Read the docs page where you generate your HTML. All these come with, so in this example, we have Sphinx, which is a documentation generator that allows you to write in some format like Markdown, and then it will generate these web pages for you. So you won't be dealing with them directly, but it's good to know what's underneath all this. A lot of this comes from experimentation. Like I can straight up tell you now that I have no idea what is going on with a lot of stuff, and as I'm developing, most of the time I pretty much have an NDN tab open, and then I'm just clicking through links here and there in NDN, and then reading something like this. So for example, I want to record the grid template columns syntax. I go over here, and then I see I can declare it like that with values, and a track list before, an auto track list, or just inheriting some global values. For CSS, there's like several CSS libraries that you can use. Highly recommend you use them. They'll speed up your development a lot. I put Bootstrap and Foundation over here, but there's a lot of them. Like you can literally go and search top 10 CSS libraries 2020, and then you can see whether there's anything that catches your eye. Tailwind is pretty popular, I heard. Yeah.
Yes, Tailwind is very good.
Oh, you have used Tailwind?
Yep, we use that to design the Hack and Roll website, and it's very easy to make it responsive.
Oh, okay. This is like an ad slant. Yeah. You really have a lot of choices. Oh, I like this one a lot. Booma. Where is the link? Hello? Yeah, I like this one a lot. Booma. So clean, and I think it uses Flexbox. How does the grid system work? Okay, whatever. Yeah. So check it out, and then have some fun with CSS. I mean, it's your page, right? You probably want it to have like some of your personality. And then, yeah, go ahead and design your Orbital project. So that should be the end of this. Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening. Yeah.
Can you unshare your screen? I got something I want to share to some of the participants.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. Let me see.
I didn't
see how. You didn't what?
Oh, some of you PM me. I didn't see it earlier. I'm going to respond now.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, what I want to show you guys is a bit of a tooling. So like the type of tools that you can get started with to just quickly get started with like coding in HTML and CSS. So over here, you see I have this HTML page. Okay, this is VS Code, by the way. If you really have no idea which editor you want to use, personally, I recommend VS Code. A lot of people use like Subline text or Jingyan uses Emacs. It's up to you. Just use your personal favorite. Editor doesn't matter as long as it's not exemplify. Yeah. So yeah, so just use a good code editor, the one that you're comfortable with, and then yeah. So over here I'm showing you VS Code because I think this is the easiest way to get started with just writing HTML and CSS because they already come with a lot of defaults about like how to like deal with HTML and everything. So like the syntax highlighting already built in once you save HTML file. So over here, I just want to showcase some of the extensions I have enabled. Actually, the most important one I want to show is prettier. So this is a code formatter. So let me just show you how it works. So over here, I have a HTML file. The moment I save it, right, I press Ctrl S, it will just, okay, let me zoom in a bit. Does anyone know how to zoom in VS Code? Okay. It's gigantic now. Oops. Okay, so over here, right, okay, I have this HTML snippet. Then the moment I save it, it will format it for okay. So let me just give an example. Let's say I have a P tag, and then I just something is wrong with my caps lock. P tag, and then I just say like hello, I'm Chris. All right, and then what happens? Let's say if I forgot the closing tag, and then the moment I press save, it will just add it for me. And let's say if I messed up the formatting, let's say I'm a very bad programmer. I'm a very bad coder, and I really don't really care about indentation and whatever, and I still want the code to look nice. So like hello, and then I stuff like multiple heading text into one line. My name. Okay, so something like that. So it looks very messy now, but the moment I save it, it will just format everything nicely for you. So this extension is called Prettier. Okay, it's a code formatter. Yeah, so you just need to install it in VS Code under extensions and just apply some settings. I use like editor format on save. Yeah, so I just added this setting, and whenever I save my file, you just format everything nicely for you. It works for CSS, works for HTML, and JavaScript as well. So it will just help you make everything look nicer. So just now, previously, I think just now Jingyan was talking about CSS frameworks, right? So we were talking about Tailwind CSS. Okay, so actually, you want to think like, oh, what are CSS frameworks and how does it help me? So I just want to move into a concept called responsive design. So I'm sure you guys have used a lot of websites, right? It looks nice when you visit on a web browser. It looks nice when you visit on your phone as well. So you'll be thinking like, oh, how do they do it and why is that important? So, and that is one of the merits of like doing web dev. Okay, you guys are all
Chris,
like,
you can
this
show an
works.
example. So
Okay.
open your browser and then.
Okay, so over here, right, what you see is the desktop view. And if I were to open my developer tools and I click this mobile phone button, you see responsive design mode. Okay,
Yeah,
the
you
moment I
want to
click
zoom
on
in a
it,
little.
I don't know how to zoom my Firefox.
Just click on your developer tools and then just zoom like Control plus or hold Control and scroll. Yeah. Just
okay. Okay. Nice. Thanks for the tip. Okay. So now you can look at the 320 pixel viewport. We call this a viewport because it's what the user sees. And as you can see, it's trying to simulate a very small phone. And you can see how the content like just resizes itself to like fit into this. So let's give it like GitHub a try. I hope my GitHub doesn't have anything too weird. Okay. Okay, let's see inspect element. And then I can just change the viewport. And you see, the moment I change to a mobile viewport, okay, you see the nav bar changes and the content just reflows to look very nice and everything. So yeah, so that's a very important merit of us doing web dev for like Orbital and all. We can just develop once and have it be able to be deployed on the desktop, deployed on any web browser anywhere regardless of whether you're using Android or whether you're using iOS, because it just lives on the browser itself. Okay, like you see the nav bar looks, the navigation bar, yeah, looks very nice. But when I change it back to a desktop viewport, it's formatted like that as well. Okay, so previously we were talking about like CSS framework. So a very common one that people will ask you to use is Bootstrap. So why you want to use this type of CSS frameworks is because it already comes with a lot of like components for you. Let's say you want to think about, oh, let's say I have an error. How should I draw a banner alert on my web app? Okay, they already have one over here, and you can just go and like see how they do it. Okay, danger alert. Yeah, alert and alert danger. These are the two CSS class they use. So you just need to import the Bootstrap style sheet and you just include these classes into your components, and immediately it will just style them for you to look like that. Let's say you want to have a button or card, okay, a card or a carousel. So this is an example of a card, and they already have the code for you to just copy paste into your web app. Okay, remember the best skill of you guys being a developer is your ability to press the Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V button. And let's see, where are the buttons? The buttons are here. Okay, so buttons, you have this sort of primary, secondary, success, danger, blah, blah, blah. Again, copy, paste the style. It will just do everything for you. It will look like this. Very easy. Okay, and then like, even like they have variations of buttons as well. Let's say you don't want like this type of solid color buttons, you think it looks super ugly. You want them to like use this type of outline buttons. Same thing, just add a button outline to the class name and suddenly it looks a lot better and like it's very easy to use. So this is Bootstrap. So the one that we were talking about just now is a Tailwind CSS, which I think is a very good framework. So why it's a very good framework is because it's built with responsive design in mind. Okay, so the one I talked to you guys about being able to resize from a mobile viewport to a desktop viewport seamlessly. So what I mean is that, okay, again, they have components over here. You can just go to the API itself. You can look at the buttons. You can look at cards. Yeah, buttons, form grids, and navigation. Everything just go in and copy the code and paste, and you have something working in a very short time. But what is very important about this Tailwind CSS framework is how it's built for responsive design. Let me show you this code snippet. Okay, so let's say you have this this div over here that is just this shape, right? You can just define, okay, by default, I want it to be red color. By default, I want it to be red color. And let's say if I have a screen that is XL and above, it will be teal. If I have a screen that is medium and above, it will be blue color. If I have a screen that is small and above, small, that means like mobile viewports, it will be green. So you can just like simply add in like SM, medium, large, XL into your code itself. And it will just make everything very responsive and very easy for you to like come up with a very good responsive design. So this is the strength of Tailwind CSS. Basically, other developers really do the work so that you don't have to do so much work on your own, and you can just very easily make your web app look good. Yeah. So that is a responsive design. Jing Yan, anything to add on about CSS frameworks and responsive design?
This is a rabbit hole.
Yeah, actually, wherever you go, people will keep telling you, don't use Bootstrap, Bootstrap is ugly, or use material design because Google uses it or whatever. But honestly, at our stage where we are still junior developers, just pick one and just stick with it. And I'm sure you have a lot of fun like trying to like make a web app on your own. Don't need to like be too bothered about what a lot of people are saying, but eventually you reach a stage where you understand what people are saying and why they prefer this or that. And yeah, then you can start to get involved in discussions and all. Yep. So another thing that I want to talk about is, okay, then the next question you ask is, we have these CSS frameworks, we have all the JavaScript frameworks like React, like Vue.js. Why do we still need to learn like, oh, what does a div tag do? What does a p tag, or what does those very simple fundamental HTML syntax, whatever do they do? Why do we still need to learn that, right? So the reason is because even though those type of frameworks, they offer a type of abstraction for you guys to make you easier to develop your web apps, it's still very important for us as web developers to know what the web is built on, which is really just plain and raw HTML as you see here. And it's also very important for us in a performance standpoint, okay, to know the type of HTML that's like compiled by our React or whatever framework that we use. Because it's not something that us as developers in Singapore will feel a lot, because a slow website in Singapore is still not very slow. But let's say if you were to, in the future, move to a emerging market such as Indonesia or China, where their internet speeds are not as fast as Singapore, a website that loads like 1 second slower on Singapore internet will probably load around 8 to 10 or even 20 seconds slower on like Indonesia internet. Okay, and you realize in those countries, right, people there actually have a lot more mobile phones as compared to computers, which is why, again, responsive design is very important. Okay, it's very important to design your web app to be able to fit that type of market, depending on like wherever you want to work for in the future. Definitely not as important as Orbital, but as part of a web development, is a very important concept to know of. So I just want to share this article. Okay, so this is by Carousel. This is one of the web developers of Carousel. They were trying to rapidly expand to different markets around the Southeast Asia region, and they say that why they rewrote their mobile website, and because they wanted it to load very fast and improve the experience of their web app that deals with users. So you can see like there are some metrics here. They say that you need to realize that if your app loads fast, people will be less pissed, and people less pissed means that you have higher user retention. Okay, so like of course you see a lot of recurring things, like you see like best practices, you see like SEO, whether people can search for your product when you go to like Google and all. Because honestly speaking, when you launch a new product as a startup or whatever, most of your traffic, right, is actually from like people just maybe like more than 50% is from Google, from people like finding out about your product and all. And again, there's like accessibility scores and all. Okay, so I'll link this article to you guys in the Zoom chat, and you guys can read it on your own. And yeah, so in conclusion, it's very important for us as web developers to know our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript fundamentals, even though there's a lot of abstractions, especially if you are the type that wants to work in Google or Facebook. Because why? It's not because that their interviews require you to do so. It's because Google and Facebook are the ones who are writing React. They are the ones who are writing Vue.js. And in order to come up with those abstractions, first you need to have a very good understanding of your HTML and JavaScript fundamentals by itself. So yeah, I will just send this link to you guys, and I'll start sharing my screen. Jingyan, back to you.
Yeah, I don't really have much. Maybe one thing that I can talk about, right, is also editing HTML by hand. Give me a moment. Share screen. Okay, I didn't want to cover too much about editing HTML by hand, because the truth is, you probably won't be doing that. But since we are here, we can how do I use this? Wow, VS Code confuses me. What?
So yeah, you guys remember to join if you guys are interested, remember to join the React workshop later. It's taught by Reynold, another one of our seniors, and I think React is a very good framework to help you guys simplify the whole process of web development. Would be a good workshop for you guys to go for as well. It's happening at 1 in one of the mission control links. I hope you guys managed to sign up for it. Yeah.
Okay. Visual Studio Code, right, comes with a built-in extension. So not really an extension, I guess. It comes with something built-in called Emmet. which allows you to expand your HTML text. So as an example, say I want to create an entire HTML document. I can type this like bang exclamation mark, and then I press tab, and then it will expand to this. Hello, Chris, can we not do that? It will expand to this entire HTML template where it will come with some like very sane defaults. So all I did was I pressed exclamation mark and then I pressed tab and then it generated this for me. It's too big. Yeah, okay. The idea is you can type some tag like H1, then you press tab, and then you can have the tag itself. So same thing with, no, I do not want that. P. You can nest things like, for example, UL and UL with the CSS selector, if you remember from earlier, the descendant, LI, and then I press tab, hello, and then it expands to UL and LI. So if you wanted like more lists, for example, you can also specify the number, LI times 5, and then you can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, things like this. So Hammer is really nice for editing HTML. And other things. The reason why I bring this up is because this extension, right, Emmet, also works when you're editing something like React. Because if you recall earlier, React has something that kind of looks like HTML, but isn't really HTML, but isn't HTML at all. So these Emmet shortcuts, right, also work for like wow, I did not want that. Also work to expand out into something like so it's pretty nice for typing out all this stuff, and it's quite straightforward to learn. I think the learning curve is worth it. There's not much of a learning curve actually. It's just remembering your CSS selectors. So it's also like nice revision and save your keyboard. Yeah. Other than that, I don't. There is some. Why is this to the right? There are projects like, there are tools like browser sync, so that you don't have to manually reload your page every time. So whenever you save your file, it will auto reload for you. The thing is, I also won't go into that because when you develop in your modern JavaScript libraries, all of their hot reloading comes for free. Like the project will auto set it up for you when you're in development mode. So it's just for you to keep in mind. And that's all I have for like editing HTML by hand. Yeah, so does anyone have any other questions? You can PM me as well. Or if you would like something specific to your project itself, is also okay.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, now's the best time to ask. Just feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to just type in the chat if you're shy.
Yeah. If not, I think this is the end of it.